This podcast is presented by Nonoise.club. Nonoise is creating an ecosystem of innovation to fight noise pollution. When talking about noise, one of the first questions coming is what noise and where? Data. Noise is everywhere, and that's exactly what my guests are mapping today. Today, my guests are Thomas and Theo Messerer, the co-founders of the Web3 startup Silencio Network. Hi, Thomas. Hi, Theo. How are you doing?
Amazing. Thank you for having us here today, Julian.
Thanks, Julian.
Very nice to have you both. What's the first question people ask you when we speak about noise pollution?
First question.
Let's first, Thomas.
What's the first question?
If it's really as bad as we claim it to be, because I think a lot of people are really not aware of this, silent killer within that. Because at the end of the day, it is something that people do not take as serious as air pollution or, let's say, plastic pollution, because they cannot really see it, and just being able to understand the, health impacts that it can have on our lives on a day-to-day basis is just eye-opening for a lot of people. And it really starts changing and altering their behavior, hopefully for the good.
Definitely. Nice. I think we often encounter people who are surprised by it at the very first thought. And then they start putting the pieces together and they say, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I think nobody thinks of noise pollution until they do, and when they are affected by it, no? So when you're living in that loud apartment or staying in that super loud hotel, visiting a restaurant where you can't speak, all of those situations, suddenly you're confronted with noise pollution very vividly.
And tell me why the Messerer brothers are fighting against noise. Why you exactly?
Well, I would guess that this started already when we were young. Theo and I, we're actually four Messerer brothers, and we're all together working on this, impact-driven project. And when we were younger, we, grew up with a father that is suffering for impaired hearing loss. So we already were exposed to the problem in itself from a young age. And this meant that we would always have to be very aware of, what restaurants we went to, even where our father would sit in a conversation for him to be able to partake in a normal conversation, and, what hotels we visited, and even trying to avoid loud cities. So I guess that for us, it was self-explanatory that this was an issue. But as we grew up, we started understanding that it was really the opposite when you talk to the broader masses.
And I think in addition to that, Thomas and I, we've been now, we can get into this a little bit later maybe, but on the Web3 space, for quite a while now, we saw that engaging people across the planet for a common good, to do citizen science with a common goal, works really great. And yeah, we really got fascinated by the idea of crowdsourcing data through this community-based approach. And we saw that we could use this in order to start understanding noise pollution and then create actionable insights in order to address it effectively.
So I'll say that our path into crowdsourcing data started about 4 years ago, where we started crowdsourcing air quality data all throughout major cities in Europe. And this led us to not only understand the, let's say, science behind all of this, but also comprehend that noise pollution was just ranking second next to air in terms of, the actual damage it can have in the urban landscape. And of course, we had a direct relationship with noise pollution, so it was kind of like a self-explanatory step for us. But at the same time, we saw the limitations of crowdsourcing air quality data, which needed dedicated hardware, which of course becomes obsolete over time. There are logistical problems with that, maintenance problems. And we noticed that everybody owns a smartphone. There are over 7 billion smartphones worldwide and growing. And the first thing that people buy worldwide usually is a smartphone before they buy anything else. So we saw a huge opportunity there to use these devices that essentially are idle devices that could be put for greater use to start mapping out noise pollution all throughout the world on a hyperlocal and real level.
Nice. We started to speak directly about noise and details, but maybe a few words about yourself. Can you pitch yourself in a nutshell on a personal way? Maybe Theo, you want to start?
Absolutely. So I'm Theo. I'm one of the co-founders at Silencio. Thomas and I, as we said at the beginning, we're brothers. We've been working together for the last 10 years. Actually, before this, we've been in completely a different industry in the legal space. My background is more on the technology side of things and operations. And I'm born in Argentina. I lived most of my life in Germany. I studied in the US and also in Spain. And so I had the luck and the privilege to be confronted with multiple nationalities, and very excited to be now approaching this global project of Silencio with my brothers.
Well, I would say, of course, there's a lot of overlap, so I don't need to repeat a lot of this information. But as Theo was hinting, we are originally from Argentina, so we grew up in a very loud city of Buenos Aires. So we already understood, how loud cities can get and how they start growing. But as we moved to Germany, we also started seeing the privileges of being able to also live in smaller German towns where maybe noise pollution wasn't that big of a problem. But you started seeing cities like Munich, cities that we love, becoming louder with the years. So we do think that the tool that we're creating essentially is providing also a better path down the line. But coming back to myself, I studied economics and also did a master in management. And I worked with Theo in the legal space, mostly centralizing intellectual property portfolios from bigger companies in emerging markets, mostly in Latin America. And already back then, we were super interested in Web3 applications. And the first time we saw that there was this possibility to really start, altering human behavior to do good through an incentivization model through the blockchain, not only to create the incentive itself, but to validate that these measurements were real, were taking place by a real device in a real place. We saw this huge opportunity for us to jump into the space. And before I was telling that we were working on air quality monitoring, we were also conjointly doing other projects as well, like measuring also weather data. And we really started seeing all of this, data-driven world that is coming towards us, where we're strong believers that everything in our day-to-day on how we consume all of these major, platforms or applications that we have in our smartphone are going to be influenced in some way or the other based on geodata, right? Today, you're already maybe looking at the weather before you walk outside. But what if, before you choose next place to live or even where to spend your day, you might be aware of how the expected noise levels in that area are going to be, or the air quality, or even pollen, So we are firm believers that this is coming, and we saw a huge opportunity to position ourselves with this blockchain model in order to create a difference.
So you already started to present the company and the model. So tell us a bit more about that, maybe about Silencio first, and then a question about Depin to give maybe more details to the listeners about Depin. But first of all, Silencio Network. Can you tell us a bit more about the app?
Theo, you want to go ahead? I'll go into deep in them.
Yes. So I think the way to best describe it is we're creating the infrastructure needed in order to understand noise pollution on a hyper-local, very granular level worldwide. Yeah, we are allowing anyone with a smartphone to download our mobile app, and within a couple of seconds, create an account and start delivering value to the network. Now, we have today over 400,000 users worldwide that deliver everyday data. The application is opened more than 1 million times, and millions of readings are recorded every month. So all of this data gets aggregated within the Silencio network and our map experience. And through that, we're able to really understand what noise pollution looks like within the urban landscape, to understand hotspots where noise pollution emerges, and they go on from there.
So we have
invite the listeners. I invite the listeners to open the app, because I love geography, I love mapping, and when you open the app and see that world map with data points around noise, everything gets much clearer. So I invite the users just to understand, to download the app, or at least to open the app stores and understand that.
And those don't want to download, maybe they can also just visit the website and see the world view on the Explorer. And I think it's always super humbling to see that whatever city around the world you put in the search filter, there's a good chance that there's some user there who uploaded data. And I think from just an entrepreneurial standpoint, it's really exciting, and it makes us happy to see that even if you go to Bogota or if you go to Paris or Hong Kong, there's people delivering data.
And
Nice.
when it comes to this data, I mean, the different data sets that we're collecting today, maybe to finish on that side, so we started with street noise level data. So we think that these are data sets that are going to start helping us rethink even how we value real estate worldwide, if we get to the granularity that we're looking for. As we are starting to understand the differences, compared to a computed set of data that is static, we really understand how a location differentiates from one another at a different day of the week, hour of the day, and even going as far as understanding what the main sources of sound are. So we believe that this data set is really providing, an extended improvement of what is already there in the market. And hopefully, people are going to be consuming this through major real estate platforms very soon in order to get a much better experience when taking life-changing decisions. And furthermore, we started creating a data set that is called check-in data. So this gives you the chance, like when you leave a Google review or consume Google reviews, it's essentially the same. You can take out your phone, you go to, any restaurant you might be at, and you can create an objective recording at that moment of the noise levels at that place, at that time. And this starts creating the necessary information for us to be able to distinguish restaurants from one another, hotels from one another. And hopefully this data is also going to be consumed through hotel and restaurant booking platforms in the near future. And one of the latest data sets we just included is noise complaints, which is hopefully going to provide a tool for governments to be able to see not only live and historic noise complaints, in terms of the overall reports and trends, but really to be able to take action on an immediate level and long-lasting level in order to improve the quality of lives of people.
You say 400,000 users for now, and I think it's growing step by step because I know you for a few months, and I see already the figures growing. So congrats on that. Who are they? Who are the users concretely? And maybe a word about your business model as well. You already mentioned that, talking about Google reviews, for instance. But maybe first of all, who are the users of Silencio Network?
So we don't know them all by name personally, but no, jokes.
The podcast will be too long anyway for 400,000 people. So let's go.
Exactly. So these are individuals across 180 countries who became aware of our application either mostly through social media. No, so let's say there's a lot of influencers who post about our project on YouTube or on Twitter, or what is today called X. And then people become aware through that. And we also created a really fun and engaging way for you to come back to the app, to invite your friends and your family. We gamify the whole process, and that's a very important element in this. Is you're competing against so many apps, and think about this: you probably have tons of apps on your phone that you're not using, and so we are competing for attention span and for people to have us top of mind when either they're walking around town or if they're going into a restaurant. And so we have to make this really engaging and at the end of the day, also frictionless for you to participate. And that has proven to be the way to go. As you said yourself, the numbers are growing. At the moment, it's something like 20% month over month in terms of users. And we hope to really have millions of users in the next years to come, so that we create the most densest and hyperlocal data sets out there.
And before moving to tech, maybe a word about the business model then? Or do
Sure,
you
I'll jump on the business
revenues?
model. So let's say, explaining the business model in the most simplest terms, we are part of a, let's say, network or a way of doing or building up networks that rewards users for delivering that value. So if you would download the app and start creating data, valuable data for the network today, you essentially become all of a sudden part of this bigger network, part of this bigger vision. And every time the data gets commercialized, you earn a portion of that revenue. So we are not only positioning Silencio through this deepen model, which stands for decentralized physical infrastructure networks, which at the end of the day are just using blockchain technology in order to use that incentive mechanism, because we need to solve the chicken and the egg problem when we are creating networks of scale, so that we get to those network, positive impact and those networks effects. So what the token does essentially is create a common denominator between us in order to value this data. So I can give you one, noise token today in exchange for your data. And when the data buyer comes, they need to purchase these noise tokens to access the data. So this creates a circular economy in itself. And it creates a much fairer also economy for everybody, because it creates a win-win-win for everyone. The user gets, for the first time, the real value for their data. And I think a lot of maybe your listeners are not aware that our data, mostly if you live in European Union or in the US, most likely it's valued at over a 4-digit sum on a yearly basis. McKinsey has estimated our personal data economy to be valued at over 300 billion. And this was 2 or 3 years ago. We're definitely going to go towards the trillion within this decade. So this means that there is a massive exploitation going on where people are not getting their fair share of the value they deliver. So in the long term, we're also positioning Silencio as this, so to say, middleman in order to guarantee that everybody gets their fair share. Companies are not going to be paying more than they already are with maybe bigger data aggregators, but at the same time, you're getting your fair share. And this works thanks to this Web3 model.
You explain in your word the difference between Web 2 and Web 3, finally, where you are the middleman platform is avoiding that data is exploited, not giving any earnings, any reward for the users. I love asking the question, why now? Why do you think that's the right moment to launch Silencio? Is the technology, the blockchain-based technology or Web3, the reason why now?
I think that that's the exact question that we set out when we started Silencio, because it's the number one determining factor for a startup to succeed or to fail is the timing. If you're too early or too late, that makes the entire difference. And so why now is we saw that Google and other mapping capabilities and platforms are taking a big bet on hyperlocal data. So this is the way that we can source it. Think about Google Maps. They drive throughout the streets and collect data every couple of years, but it's not fresh data. Yeah. But if you do this from a community perspective and you have people with cameras in the cars who are constantly uploading fresh data, it creates a better product and a better appetite from these technology companies that want to incorporate this data. And so we saw that, for example, Google was incorporating data on air quality, as Thomas hinted earlier. They've been incorporating data as well on pollen, on wildfires, and just to make the experience that you have with mapping better. And we think that, Google is already telling you how full and expensive a place is. In the future, why shouldn't it be telling you as well how loud the place is? So imagine you're going to go tonight to a restaurant and you say, okay, I might, take my spouse out for dinner, but I want to be able to speak to them. And this restaurant here has 50 dBA versus the other one that has 70. And that creates a huge difference. Every 10 decibels, we perceive as a doubling of the loud soundscape around us. So that's tremendous. So that was the major aspect. And then that came together with the momentum of blockchain. And we saw, the difference between a Web 2 and Web 3 world is in essence that in Web 2, you're the product. You're not benefiting from what you're creating in value. And these technology companies, there's a handful of them that we all know out there, are taking, 99% of that benefit to them. And so this creates a very monopolistic scenario where innovation stagnates. And in Web3, the idea is very simple, is to actually come back to a free internet that is not monopolized, where everyone benefits and where innovation is unleashed. And this is blockchain at the end is just the railways to achieve this.
Maybe Julian, there, just to give you an example of why the timing is also now. I mean, a part, of course, of the, let's say, penetration of internet and mobile devices worldwide, which today has made something possible that wouldn't have been possible 10 years ago. But nonetheless, there were already initial projects like Noise Planet, which we really, love, which is more of an academic approach to doing what we are doing. But to give you an understanding of how the Web3 component all of a sudden helps that exponential growth, Silencio itself was able to, create an X20, let's say, density of data and within probably 2 years compared to what the traditional model had more or less 15 to 18 years to do, right? So it's just impressive to see that the moment you start creating the right incentives to do good, all of a sudden things take off.
I hope you're right, and I hope that's the right momentum. That now is the right momentum. As a last question for the question round, what's your vision? So where do you want to be in 10 years with Silencio, and where do you think noise pollution or innovation against noise pollution is going to be in 10 years?
I think Tom, go ahead, please.
I mean, we always like to say that, in 5 to 10 years down the line, we want to see 1 billion people plus consuming our data on a daily basis, one way or the other, right? Even without them knowing that it's coming from us, because it is going to be consumed through all of those, major platforms that you use in your everyday life. And hopefully our data is going to help shape a better future for us all, right? If we expect the world population not only to keep on steadily growing, but having more or less 68%, according to the United Nations, living in cities by 2050, this means that cities are just going to get louder and louder. And if we can make a difference there, that's really a huge success for us.
Theo?
Yeah, I was going to say, we're consuming data more and more. Artificial intelligence is going to take off massively, and we need the field data to be incorporated in this. And if we can create, I would say, capitalism 2.0, that you have the incentives to do good, but it has a real impact, it has a utility for society, then that's really what excites me, because you're going to have users who want to do good, but then who also benefit from it. And then you have a society benefiting from the data that creates the actions to address noise pollution.
Let's close the question round, and I invite the listeners to stay with us and to listen to the discussion. So thanks for all your answers. And let's start now the discussion. So to start this discussion round, I hear you guys, you speak about impact, and that's how we met, and the first discussion we had, Thomas, and that's what I want to do with Nonoise.club as well, to have really impact on noise pollution. But at the same time, you speak about selling data. So I understand that you're selling data and rewards the consumer, the user, but how to prove yourself that it's really an impactful product, and why do you think it will have impact and not just impact of, okay, I get some rewards or I get some money, but having impact for a lot of users is not just about the financial aspect. So why do you think it's really it will be impactful?
Yeah, I'm going to start there, Theo, and then I'll pass on to you, because I'm sure you have some interesting points.
I know we are in the discussion round, so let's go all together.
Okay. No, so first of all, I would definitely spread this answer up into different phases. One of them is we are entrepreneurs by nature. Theo and myself, my brothers, we love doing what we do. But of course, we are entrepreneurs, and we're not working for non-profit organizations, which is something different. And we are definitely a profit-driven organization. And this is how we are able to follow these, flywheel model, where essentially everybody gets to profit. But if at the same time we can create a positive impact on society, and create real utility, not only for the companies consuming this data, but for the users that are creating this data, I think that's an overall win, right? Win, win, win. And this is what we look for in everything that we do, because we like to strive towards projects that have a bigger, broader vision in place. And this is what really gets us excited as entrepreneurs. And everything we have touched so far in the past has always been that way. And we want to keep it that way going forward.
But at least I trust you on that. But so that you do that for impact, I'm sure about it. Why do you think it will have impact? You told me once the noise note or the noise measurement is placed on Google reviews, for instance. People will try to reduce this level. And you told me before 1 billion of people using that data is your target. But how many people, how many users recording or measuring noise do you need to have that data allowed? And how big should it be to have really impact on that people and restaurant and any location start to think, okay, we need to reduce noise because our Google review on noise is a disaster.
Yeah, I think it's noise as also this answer will be, it's a subjective matter, no? So it might have been noisy in that very moment. That doesn't mean that there's a trend that indicates that over time that place is noisy. So to turn it around, what we're looking here, and this is the reason why we have a strong scientific a team as well of professors looking exactly into the data to create the insights that we need that are conclusive. No, if you have one reading of one place, doesn't tell you much. But if you have 1,000 readings over time, different days of the day, of the week, and then different weeks and months, it gives you a good picture or a much better picture than if it's just one reading. So with that said, we're looking at the rule of large numbers here.
So you don't want to display like, I don't know, I look for a restaurant, I'm on a Google review, I see 70 decibel because the guy before me or yesterday had recorded 70 decibel, but maybe he spoke at the same time and it's completely subjective.
Exactly.
So we try to create a kind of average of this data, of a data set, complete data set.
Precisely. So Julian, it's like this. If you go out today and you want to drink a coffee and you look for a coffee place that says, this coffee place has terrible coffee because one person has said that they had the worst coffee in their life. No, you might say, okay, this gentleman might have been upset that day, or there's a lot of subjectiveness that flows into this and bias, obviously. But if there's, 2,000 people that say that the coffee isn't great, you might avoid that place. And so we think the same about our data. The more condensed and the more data we collect, the better our insights. So to answer your first questions, how many users we need? We're going to need millions of users to make this a reality. And this is where the element of gamification that I have mentioned at the beginning comes back. So let's say that we have an area that isn't covered well enough, that we need for commercial purposes to cover because we got a mandate from a city that's, wants to understand noise pollution better. So we say, okay, let's take this area, the city of London, for the sake of the argument, and we're going to increase rewards in this area for a given time. So users are incentivized to move there to create value for the network because ultimately they're financially driven in that sense, and they're going to go there and generate that data infrastructure.
Yeah, there's one big aspect there to add, which is the power of machine learning, combining it with all of this, right? We're creating the foundation to be able to take smarter decisions and increase the density and the certainty of the data that we're looking at. So this means that once you get to the data foundation you need, you can very quickly already get to an all-comprehensive data set that is able to be commercialized on a worldwide scale, mostly on the cities or the places where we have the highest degree of certainty. So this already all of a sudden created the tool for you to take smarter decisions in your everyday life. So if I would compare, let's say, the market 30 years ago when smartphones, let's say, weren't the norm, and you would decide on, where to have dinner tonight or where to go on vacation next week, you wouldn't have direct information on, how good is the rating of that restaurant.
Yep.
If I'm visiting a new place, how good is the weather going to be? And this is information that today it's already seamlessly incorporated in my everyday life.
Totally.
I take it
We
as
have the
granted.
same behaviors. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but it's influencing your decisions, and that wouldn't have been the case otherwise, right?
And it reminds me that when you say all that, it's not just about. I mean, the use case of having a romantic dinner with your spouse is a nice one, speaking to a lot of people. But there is a lot. If you want to have a business lunch, sometimes it's just really difficult. And we speak about normal moment for people having all have capabilities. But when speaking about people having any surdity or hearing aids, hearing problem, older people, elderlies, or even people with autistic syndrome, it's become just a massive issue. It's not just about having a romantic dinner and at that place I need something. It's a day-to-day issue of a lot of persons. I had a discussion with about tinnitus a few days ago. That's exactly the same. When you suffer of tinnitus, you need a quiet room, and going to a noisy restaurant, to a noisy bar, it's just you already know you can't go in. And a few weeks ago, I've been in a very big business party event network, and I went outside just to get some fresh air. And all the time I met people just saying, "Well, I don't smoke. I didn't need fresh air. It's way too cold, but I need some quiet space because it's way too loud inside," which is normal for a business event with a concert. But at the same time, people are just suffering, and as these people are not taken into consideration. So I love completely the idea, and that's why I wanted to have you here in this podcast, that we need to make this data available for anyone, and we need to be aware out of it. And I'm sure that even displaying the data for people not being aware of it will increase the awareness of noise pollution, and they will start to think about that. And as you said at the beginning, once you know about your startup, or once you know about noise pollution, you start thinking about, yeah, you're right. It's really disturbing. So that's a way to go for the code of noise pollution.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, we started noticing now over the last 2-3 years that we are using our own data on day-to-day decisions. Let's say if we would have taken now a business call, and I would be in a city that I do not know the places around me, I would definitely already start using my data to find a quiet coffee place to be able to even take a call from there, right? The other day I was traveling and I used our data to put it on top of the Airbnb map to see, where should I book an Airbnb? And imagine having all of that integrated directly. So we definitely see the potential, but we understand that if we do our job right, and not only is it going to create that vision that we're explaining, but it's also increasing the awareness. And if we can bring this message to millions of people, that already is going to speak for itself, as people tend to share good information with one another.
There was a very disturbing article once that I read in the New York Times that came out, I think, last year, and it showed that over 100 million individuals in the US, so in the United States, are living in environments that are above the recommended 65 maximum of the World Health Organization. And the thing wasn't even that it's 100 million that disturbed me, but it was that it was mostly marginalized people in society already that are of lower income. Yeah. And so I think that this then trickled down in the article, saying that the impact that you have on noise on kids, for example, is tremendous. Yeah. When it comes to learning capabilities and learning impairment, it takes a big toll. And so essentially it creates this vicious cycle in which children of already, with more challenging backgrounds and less economic means are growing up in environments where they can't develop their full cognitive capacity. And through that, don't get the same chances as other people. And so only understanding noise pollution to address this has a tremendous health, financial, but also societal impact if addressed correctly.
You mentioned a lot this study of I think it was in a New Yorker high school many years ago. They compared a quiet classroom with a classroom with mobility noise, I think from railway, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And they compared the result was the kids in the loud classroom is losing 1/4 per year of education, which is crazy. And if you have children, or if you take care about the education of children, you think, okay, that's a major issue we have outside. And sometimes I just compare it with the performance in the company. When people say, yeah, it's a bit loud in the office, but that's our culture. That's great. Okay, but it's really tiring. It's stressful, and you kill your performance. So imagine you have your paying wages for 100 people, and you have 25 people in average not performing because it's too loud. So at that time, companies would start to invest way more if we give that kind of data. So that's a real point. I want you to go back on that. Do you think we have an influence on regulations? Because I see very, very different regulations, and you know exactly as good as me that regulations are driving investment as well. So if we have more regulation in the future, we will have more investment into that area. Do you think regulation will change? Do you see that coming? And do you think your network, Silencio, will help to do that?
So, for example, with through our scientific advisors that work with the European Union on Noise Directive, we know very well that the European Union has a noise directive to reduce noise within the urban spaces until 2030. There's also the requirement for member states to map out noise within cities. All of this is today coming too short, bottomless, and we're missing the data infrastructure to address this. So this is hopefully one place that we can come in order to create, the insights again to address and to demonstrate the severeness of noise pollution and through that impact regulations.
Yeah, and I also need to consider that regulation comes also through pressure from society as well, right? And if we can create the tools to empower society to be able to create attention for a problem that otherwise would be lost into oblivion, and we create not only the data records to showcase all of this, but collectively empower people to do so, then all of a sudden you're giving the small, so to say, David the tools to fight against the Goliath.
Yeah, totally. I speak to regulators, national or European level, and I'm convinced that things are moving. But you said that we need data, and I hope you're providing the right tool. Guys, it's been really a pleasure to have you in this podcast. Thanks a lot for your attention, for your time today, and your explanation about Silencio. Other last questions. I understand the impact you can have, and I want to ask you, what can you do for our listeners? Because I hope it will bring a lot of impact and reduce noise pollution and do a lot for the listeners. But what can the listeners do for you? How can they help you?
Yeah. So again, I think we invite anyone that has and wants to contribute to download our app, to test it out for themselves, to give us feedback. That's the best that we want from our users, to tell us, make us aware of certain functions or things that they would like to see, and test out the product. And at the end of the day, we're trying to create something here for the community that is community owned and led. And we are, through that, trying to create the best possible.
Thomas, do you agree? Fully agree. So, dear listeners, you know what to do. Silencio.network. You can download the app, Silencio app, on the app stores. Try it out. Normally I would ask you, can you do some special condition for our listeners, but they already get rewarded by your app. So, I mean, it's already very, very good. So guys, just try it out, give some feedback. Can we reach out to you through LinkedIn maybe, or what's the best way to contact you?
LinkedIn
Perfect.
or Twitter, whichever you guys prefer, or email.
We have a very vibrant and active community also on Discord or X. I think this is where you're going to find most of the people. And if you guys, when you enter the app, there's going to be the chance of including a welcome code. And if you use the name welcome, you're going to get an extra bonus when you start. Of course, the current product is more driven towards a Web3 community. But as we progress this vision into the future, we're going to see a much more Web2 targeted approach.
So I propose we do something else. We do a Nonoise code together, and we discuss afterwards that we get even better bonus than the welcome one. Let's discuss about it later. No pressure, guys.
Fantastic.
Theo, Thomas, it was really nice to have you. Thanks a lot for your time, and I wish you well, and we speak soon.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Julian.
much for having us here, Julian.
Bye bye.
It was a pleasure.